Welcome back to The Line. I'm Gene Grant. A standoff at a wildlife refuge in Oregon has been in the headlines this week. There's quite a bit of debate right now in the national media about the management of public lands in the West. It also got us thinking here at New Mexico in Focus about the Tierra Amarilla courthouse raid in New Mexico in the 1960s. That was part of a larger protest over the rights of land grant heirs here in northern New Mexico. And Laura, is there any, I don't know, maybe this is a stretch, but I just really love this idea of these two things kind of looking at it through this lens. Any connection that you could see between our fights that we've had here about land issues and what these folks are trying to do up in Oregon, or is that just too much of a stretch for you, or is there anything there?
No, I mean, there's certainly, you know, this issue of expansion of the federal government control over lands is one that Westerners in general, it resonates with them. And in New Mexico, just as, you know, anywhere else, Nevada, Oregon. I think the part that maybe is difficult for folks is the fact that it's an outside group going to Nevada and addressing concerns that they have and sort of bringing the same argument to
Nevada
Oregon.
First, and
even
second,
the people who were involved in this initially, the Hammonds, who ended up going to jail and all that, or going to prison, they've distanced themselves from this Bundy group. So I think the tactic is what's troubling to a lot of people, but the underlying issue I think is one that crosses a lot of different populations. One thing though I do want to say about the Hammond issue, you know, this to me speaks to mandatory minimum issues. I mean, this mandatory minimum federal sentences is a real problem. You're taking discretion away from judges. These people had served their time initially, and then a judge came back and said you didn't serve enough time. That's a mandatory minimum issue and a serious problem with our criminal justice system.
I'm glad you brought that up. There was a great piece in The Atlantic a couple of days ago that addresses this very thing, that folks, Sophie, on the left should be seeing this thing as a potential opportunity to talk about that very issue, which is very close to folks who are dealing with incarceration issues here in our country. So there's a bit of a connection there, isn't there?
And there's actually a tremendous pushback in the courts who, you know, the judge says, you know, I'm here to deliver sentence, but my hands are tied by something the legislature has put forward or Congress has put forward, such that I don't have the discretion that I would normally have to do justice in this courtroom. It's a tough thing because this particular set of people, there's so much around that core issue of minimum sentencing that it's hard to kind of peel that away.
Let me interrupt you for a second, just to back up and have you expand on something. The father and the son had served time.
Correct.
The son a year, the father I think 3 months. And then the judge came back and said, no, you know, that's not enough. After they were out.
I mean, it wasn't like while they were in jail, they said, we're going to keep
them out.
Exactly right.
There was a review of this. There was a review of the sentence, from what I understand.
The federal government appealed. The federal government went back and said, we don't agree with the sentencing.
Right. The sentence was not long enough, and then was able to point to a mandatory minimum that should have apparently been applied in the first place. So the issue of mandatory minimums is really interesting because we see that they can be quite uneven depending on sort of the political temperature at the time. One of the classics that's discussed most often is the difference in sentencing between people who are convicted for possession or distribution of crack cocaine as opposed to powdered cocaine. Crack cocaine being seen as more of a minority drug, whereas whites and people with more income, frankly, are more likely to be caught with powdered cocaine. And so we see that the discretion that comes in creating those minimums that then is not, the courts are not able to sort of right size. Beyond that, though, we do have, I gotta say it, this group in Oregon, what we saw at Cliven Bundy's ranch in Nevada, this is a very radical group. This is a very, very radical group that has hitched their wagon to, as Laura has said, a legitimate discussion about the role of the federal government in managing our public lands. In New Mexico, we see polls say that New Mexicans believe that public lands are in fact meant to be managed by the federal government. There isn't that sort of overwhelming sympathy that you might expect in the West for this group, but this is also a group that doesn't like paying taxes, that doesn't believe that they should be subject to the laws of the U.S.
I don't like paying taxes either.
That's a real problem. But you don't say I am a sovereign citizen. I'm a sovereign citizen. My home is my island, and I owe taxes to no one.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting, you know, Tom, you know, over 50% of our land here in the West is federally controlled. Over 50%. A lot of people that, when you really look at a map, it's amazing how much is just blocked off.
Yeah.
Now that doesn't mean, there's good reasons for that. There's environmental issues to protect. There's grazing does damage to property. There's ways to bring back stuff like that.
Department of Defense.
Department of Defense, right. Is there a middle ground here? I mean, obviously, holding a wildlife refuge is not going to get everybody to the negotiating table, but is there something here to come out of this possibly?
Of course. I think there is. Obviously, I think the tactics in this, Oregon situation are, really off track and stuff. But when you look at like the Sagebrush Rebellion in Nevada, that got the attention of the federal government.
Go ahead and explain that a little bit, by the way.
It's the Nevada legislature basically said we're going to take over all federal lands, and basically that didn't fly. In Nevada, in Nevada. It would really work well in Utah, but hey, it would be an interesting fight.
Working for the
but
Bundys.
there's a whole thing. There's a whole thing when you look at state right issues, and then but I think there's a larger issue at play here: is how does the federal government interact with local communities, and this is not a new issue. I mean, we saw it back in 1982 with the Conch Rebellion down in Key West when Key West decided to secede from the Union, and then seek $1 billion worth of reparations, all because a Border Patrol decided to close down A1A to look for to look for illegal immigrants.
Yes.
And so it really comes down to how does the federal government communicate and interact with the locals and communicate that vision with the locals.
Right.
And so far, as we've seen through a number of administrations, whether it be the Reagan administration, Clinton, or Bush, every administration has failed in adequately communicating what their purpose and what their role is with the federal lands.
Interesting there. Your thought on this, pull back a little bit from the Bundys and tactics, we've all covered that plenty, but this idea of, I mean, if I have this right, the charge was like they burned an acre of land, federal land, and it just, somebody got their nose out of joint about this, and things escalated to
let's look at the federal government goes in and puts these folks in prison for doing that.
Yeah.
Yet we had a massive fire in my district in Capitan and Ruidoso that was started by the federal government. The federal government went out and did a controlled burn on federal lands, and it went out of control, and it burned thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands of acres in the Capitan, Ruidoso. No, it burned homes. I mean, it was a disaster. Yet,
on some level, what we're talking about is you make an error in your business that costs your business a bunch of money. There's a business judgment rule. There are issues there that you deal with internally. Someone else walks in and steals all the petty cash. Well, that loss of money is certainly punishable, is certainly prosecutable.
I hear what you're saying, but the difference to me is, we have someone that started this fire and it burned, and now they're serving prison time. And I think my point is I think that people are tired of the unfair. The federal government continues to have, regardless of this is not a President Obama, Republican, Democrat thing. The land grab in the last 100 years by the federal government in the Western United States it's crazy. The federal government is not charged. All the stuff you mentioned earlier, Gene, about the environmental side and all of that stuff, it all sounds good, but that's not what the federal government's by Constitution is charged with. And the problem is they go in and they take this land from somebody. It's not that this has been, a lot of this hasn't been federal land that's been sitting there since the day we became a country and they belong to the feds. They've gone in and told ranchers and farmers, people that own the land, people that paid for land, they paid them. They've paid them, but they say, we're taking that land from you and we're putting it to...
Well, and I think it's such a multidimensional issue because, those same ranchers and farmers and stuff, it's not like the land was necessarily theirs to begin with. There were also native people there who were displaced, from a lot of these places.
An actual tribe.
This issue of, and the federal government seizing some native lands as well, forcibly. We have the Shoshone example in Nevada with I believe the Dan sisters who basically fought with that, in 2001 through 2003. It was a very recent thing. Still an issue of contention even now. So I think this is something that culturally a lot of people, this idea resonates. I think, again, the tactics are what's troubling in this issue in Oregon right now. And then moving forward, like you sort of have winners and losers. And I think here in New Mexico, you see an expansion, creating national parks and national monuments, which has been successful for some communities, but other communities who have been very against it for a variety of reasons.
And I want to make sure
we need to wrap up, unfortunately.
I just want to make sure, Gene, I don't approve of the tactics of what they're doing. I want to make sure so that the discussion isn't Dan's approving of that. I disapprove of the tactics of what they're doing. I think it leads to a greater discussion that we've been having and we can't seem to bring closure to, is what is the federal government's role in seizing, taking, operating, and maintaining private lands or any lands in the western United States?
I have this thought. This is an area where they're holding this place that Teddy Roosevelt in 1908 was one of the designated places. I always wonder what he's thinking about this thing, spinning in his grave, watching this go down. Up next, we hear why a public policy organization believes New Mexicans agree on solutions for some of the most significant challenges in our state right now.